One of the most annoying things that conservatives will try to get you with when you go on podcasts is the whole, like, what is a woman question, okay? And when we use language, when we talk about things, what we're really doing is, so think about for a second, like, what language is, and think about what thoughts are, and think about what's happening when we communicate, okay? When I am saying something, okay, I can never actually directly share my experience with you, okay? So if I touch this, okay, I actually can't share with you the experience or the sensation of, like, touching my table. I can't share that with you, right? In philosophy, you call these qualia, right? These are things, these are senses, a sensory experience that you have. It's conveyed via sense data, via sensory organs or whatever, and it's the experience you have, the sensation of a thing. And it's I can't communicate it to you. But what I can do is I can hope that if I say certain words that I can trigger in your mind some associated network of neurons and some experience that allows you to understand what I'm saying, right? So when I say, oh, like this table, it's very hard, right? What happens in your mind is, so, you know, you have a word associated, a concept associated with table. And then when I say table, there's like this word table pops up, and there's a whole bunch of things in your mind that immediately pop up, some strongly associated and some weakly associated, right? Colors are going to pop into your mind, probably more like brown or like woody colors, maybe silver, you know, probably not like bright reds and purples. Size is going to be a big one, right? Oh, a table is probably of a certain size, right? Feeling is probably going to be a big one, right? It probably feels right. These are all these associated things. Structure, right? It's probably got, you know, 4 legs or 6 legs or whatever, depending on how big it is. Function. These are all things that are going to pop in your head. If I say table, what's happening is you're having these things, I would say, these things are all like the semantic understanding of what a table is, okay? As opposed to, like, a computer might have like a syntactic understanding, right? A computer is going to output something like a table has 4 legs. A table is hard. A table is, there's a syntax there, but the semantic understanding of like of what these things are, the sensations of things, right? These are like the human way that we make words, okay? All this to say, right? So when I brought up the what is a woman thing, somebody will ask, well, what is a woman? Well, that's a very, very hard thing to answer. Not because, you know, I'm being wishy-washy or because I'm a cucked liberal or whatever, but it's just like, this is a very complicated question. It's a very complicated concept. I feel like the best way to illustrate that is to just even go with like the table thing, right? If I were to ask you, what is a table? There is no definition that you can give me of table that would encompass all things that are tables, that we would all agree are tables, and would reject all things that we agree are not tables, right? For instance, when I say table and when I say the word chair, there's going to be a bunch of mutually lit up things here, whether you agree immediately or not. If you think about it, it's like, well, chairs tend to have 4 legs. Tables tend to have 4 legs, sure. Chairs support things, are usually hard. Not always, though. Tables tend to support things. Sure. Okay, yeah. Chairs, though, tend to be smaller, which they are, but not always, right? You can have a small table, right? Okay, sure, generally, right. Yeah, okay. Language is complicated, okay? So that's the number one thing, okay? The second thing is, we've talked about all these things, right? Okay. Your conversational maxims, all right, that are required for you to have like a real good conversation. There's some level of charity. I'm sorry, there's not some level of charity. There is a massive level of charity that has to be applied when you are having a conversation with somebody to know what the anybody is saying about anything, because we communicate so vaguely with our language. We're really not saying almost anything at all, right? So for instance, you have mom and dad. Mom normally picks a kid up from school. She says, hey, can you pick our child up from school tomorrow? And the dad says, yeah, sure. And then let's say that tomorrow the dad shows up at 11:59 p.m., right? Well, the mom is obviously going to be pissed. Well, if the dad replies, you didn't tell me what time to pick him up. It's like, oh, come on, you know what I meant, right? Let's say the dad picks the kid up at 8:30 a.m. Mom drops him off at 8. Dad picks him up 30 minutes later. It's like, oh, I picked him up right up, right? Oh, you didn't say what time, right? Let's say that the dad walks to school to literally just pick up the child and then sets him back down on the ground. Well, when I said pick up, I didn't mean just like actually pick him up. I meant like to bring him home, obviously, right? Well, like there's a million, and it sounds silly, but in every single interaction that you have with people, there are these maxims of cooperation when you're having conversations to make things make sense. You know, if I walk into a if I walk into, the bedroom, if my partner was sleeping on the bed and I'm like, hey, are you hungry? And they're like, yeah, I am hungry. And I go, okay, cool. And then I leave the room and I don't say anything for 30 minutes. And you're like, were we getting food or whatever? I was like, no, I was asking if you're hungry. I was like, and it's like, okay. Like even just asking that question implies obviously like so much more, right? And this extends to everything when it comes to conversation. One of the fun things I think with chatting with Pisco when he's at his best is Pisco and I think have a really good ability to like understand the concept of what the person is getting at, and then to kind of like build like a steel man around all of the things that are being said so that we can immediately like skip over dumb bullshit and skip over irrelevant points and then get really to like the meat of like what's being said, right? So like in a past argument, maybe I would say something like I think that if we send people to space, I think that people that go to outer space, I think there might be an argument for sending people to Mars without their consent because we know that because we need to populate Mars and nobody's going to do it willingly, right? And maybe I'll say something like that. And then maybe rather than like responding immediately with Pisco might reject immediately and say something like, oh, so like, would you literally kidnap people up the street or whatever? Like, I'm sure that there would be some cooperative, like, okay, wait, so are you saying, should it be like prisoners or people have made mistakes, or whatever? Like, you'd be trying to build like a better version of my argument. Then we go back further, right? This is like how you have a good conversation back and forth, I think, because you're trying to get at the meat of, I don't even like necessarily calling it a steel man, because it's not just steel manning. What you're trying to do is you're trying to really hit in on conceptually, what is the person trying to get at, and how can I respond to the central point that this person is making? All of that because a person asked me at the beginning of the stream or whatever, they were like, how do you feel about the yes or no thing? I thought that was good. So if somebody is obfuscating or they're refusing to take a strong position because they're dodging on a point, sometimes it could be good to force a strict concession of like, hold on, do you agree or disagree with this particular thing? Because you're not like, I feel like you're wishy-washy, you're floating between these positions. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But when you're trying to enforce yes or no questions and the answer is kind of challenging, or it really is like it is very contextually relevant how you're asking the question. It becomes kind of ludicrous to give a yes or no, because then it's like I don't even know what I'm committing myself to if I say yes or no here, because I don't know how you're viewing it. In my opinion, I think the best version of this, or the best example of this, was this Twitter thread, right? LOL, people adding me this clip in response to a thought experiment I ran with Counter Connor, which was essentially Trump or Hassan, who you pick, who is a closer ally to the Dems. Not me who came up with this, but one of my co-hosts. And of course, predictably, some people pick Trump/Kirk/MAGA, revealing their unhinged derangement. That their main enemy is not Trump, it's Hassan Piker. So he brings up this thing, and then I quote tweet this with the video of like, because he says that it's unhinged derangement. And then I put out this video of like, well, here's Hassan literally saying, like, I have disdain basically for the Democrats and I'll use them as a weapon to further my own interests. Like, well, damn, that's pretty shitty, And then the response to this is, we get a very simple, Hassan or Trump, who are you voting for if you had to pick? Now, that question is what do we mean when we say that? So at its best, what I'm assuming is, what he's trying to get at here is like, who would you align more ideologically with? I guess like if they were the president of the United States and they could enact some form of their agenda, because I feel like every other question is boring, and we'll get to that, right? So my response to this is, Trump at least has some vague notion of supporting America, however misguided it is. If he destroys the country, it'd be a byproduct of his stupidity and narcissism. With Hassan, it would be by ideological design. He supports foreign terrorist groups, despises U.S. allies, supports historical revisionism to paint U.S. adversaries in a better light, has admitted that he would ban opposing political parties in the United States, and would lock his enemies forever in re-education camps if they didn't agree with his political ideology. As a Marxist-Leninist, he would support the creation of a single vanguard party to violently enforce all of these changes. This is just what we know of Hassan's views publicly. We also know that he stated on shows that he hides his true beliefs so he can funnel people further down the radicalization pipeline. We've already survived 4 years of Trump. I'm not convinced we'd survive 4 years in a Hassan-styled regime. So if you think that I've misunderstood this question here, or or if you think that this is trying to get at something different, I feel like I've answered with enough substance here that you can say, well, hold on. I want to assume either that there are the ordinary constraints on a politician, or I want to assume that Hassan doesn't have the same support Trump has, or that Hassan has the same, right? You can clarify if you want. I've given you plenty here to chew on in terms of understanding why would you say Trump over Hassan here, right? I think my answer is there's very little left to the imagination here. But then I get this like gotcha response. So this by here, I would say this is not I really don't like to use this term because people started using this against me, and I think it's kind of bad. Because as soon as you've accused somebody of not being good faith, you've basically thrown out any possibility of having a good conversation because now you're saying they're basically lying, right? So he hits me back with this. So you would vote for Trump over Hassan, correct? And it doesn't really engage with anything that I've said here at all. And I feel like my answer basically was affirming yes, right? I would probably vote for somebody who has some vague notion of supporting America versus Hassan, right? We'd survive 4 years of Trump. I'm not convinced we'd survive 4 years in a Hassan-style regime. Like, I think it's pretty obvious my answer is Trump, right? Without saying Trump. It's very obvious here, right? Like, if somebody were to say, oh, weren't you saying here that you'd vote for Trump over Hassan? I would say, yeah, of course. Yeah, that's what I was saying. I wouldn't be like, well, I didn't necessarily say that. Unless I was like Jordan Peterson or something, you know? So when he hits me back with the, so you would vote for Trump over Hassan, correct? I'm like, well, yeah. Now I give a little kind of a cheeky reply. Like, I would vote for the guy who supported January 6th versus the guy who supported October 7th. Yes. I feel like those two events kind of encapsulate pretty well the ideological differences between the two. Trump wanted January 6th because he's an actual sycophantic, narcissistic piece of shit who wanted to be president again. Not good. I think probably one of the worst things that's happened in U.S. history. But I think that Hassan Piker would legitimately support like terrorist attacks on the United States. I think he would legitimately champion those. It's like a moral good, like he does with October 7th. And so I get this here, and then I get another simple response. Okay, we have an honest disagreement then. I would vote for Hassan over Trump. I see Trump and MAGA as a greater enemy than Hassan Piker. So this isn't, how? Like, this doesn't respond to any of the substance that I brought up before. I don't even know what our honest disagreement is. Is the honest disagreement that I would vote for Hassan over Trump and he would vote for Trump over Hassan or vice versa? Like, I don't even know what the honest disagreement is here. Is it just on who we would vote for? But why? There's like no explanation here. So I guess like my counter here is just, okay, I'm not really engaging that well here anymore. So I'm like, that's just because you don't think tankies are really that bad, I guess. Then he responds with this: I hate tankies. I'm not socialist/communist like you've convinced your audience. So this is not relevant to the conversation topic at all. Hating tankies is also not relevant to anything at all. I mean, I hate Trump, right, and Hassan. I just think fascist Trump is my bigger enemy. I don't know what this means. Trump is a bigger enemy to me than Hassan is. That's true. But we're not talking about who our bigger enemy is. We're talking about who we would prefer as president, right? Like, Trump is a bigger enemy to me than like a homeless schizophrenic. But unfortunately, I'd probably prefer Donald Trump as president to a homeless schizophrenic guy. But that doesn't mean that the homeless schizophrenic is a bigger enemy, right? And then we get the shrugging emoji guy. I'm not convinced Hassan could turn this country into a Marxist hellhole if he wanted. I think Trump and MAGA are doing more damage than he could. So now we finally get a little bit more of a qualifier here of he doesn't believe that Hassan could turn the country into a Marxist hellhole. Okay, hold on. So you're saying that he wouldn't have any power as president then? So then my response here is, well, hold on. You've morphed this into a fundamentally different type of question then. If you're simply asking who I would vote for if the election were tomorrow and the rest of the political system/country would remain the exact same, well, then I'd vote for Hassan because he's too stupid and his ideas are too radical to get anything done in this country. If we're talking about like, well, let's say tomorrow we just stick somebody in office, I'm going with Hassan for sure. I seriously doubt the majority of the Democratic Party, definitely none of the Republicans, will go along with Hassan, right? So I'd vote for Hassan then. But that's like asking if I'd vote for Trump versus Hitler. I'd happily consider voting for Hitler over Trump because despite how bad Trump is, I think Hitler's name alone would scare off the majority of the Republican Party from working with him. But that's kind of a meaningless statement and misses the central point of the question. So when I say this, the original question that Pisco asks here, who would you vote for, Hassan or Trump, assuming like you just stick him in office and everything else is the same? Well, that's kind of a boring question because obviously I would vote for Hassan then because I don't think Hassan can get any of his agenda done. But then like, what's the point of the question you're asking? It's not really who do I agree with more or who's ideologically closer to me. It's who do I think ideologically could get more or less done in the administration. It's a fundamentally different type of question, you know? In which case, like, I mean, Trump can get a lot done. I'm not fully convinced that Hitler could get anything done because he's Hitler, you know? And then he responds with I don't think I've morphed anything. I'm saying gun to your head right now, Trump or Hassan. So then he pushes the question again, but despite like all of the conversation up here, we get back to the very simple, like yes or no, the very simple binary again. It's like, we're missing the point. And I guess I'm not sure what your answer is. How can you not be sure what my answer is? I've typed so much here. Or when you'd support Trump in this context, I'm obviously taking for granted the political system of the USA. I don't know what that means, taking for granted the political system of the USA. I also think Hassan is more aligned with you and Dems than fucking Trump, maybe, but like this is a different argument, right? Like what part of the political system we're going to assume is supporting them. This is a different argument. Who are we more ideologically aligned with? Basically, I think the answer is overdetermined when we're talking about Trump. I don't even know what he necessarily means about this here. I guess he's saying overdetermined is so obvious that there are so many ways that Trump is worse than Hassan. So then I go for another clarifying thing. Do you mean support or vote for? You keep changing the question. There are tons of implications in each of these terms. I would vote for Hassan because I know he has zero chance of winning. But again, that kind of misses the point of the question. In what world is Hassan more aligned with me than Trump? So then I try to get clarification on the ideological part. Hassan is fundamentally anti-capitalist, anti-liberal, anti-USA, anti-intervention in probably all scenarios. He thinks the US is probably one of the most evil countries on the planet, and he's pro-mono-party through violent enforcement. So here now I'm trying to hit at what is the ideological thing that is putting me closer to Hassan than Trump, right? Like, elucidate. And then it's, okay, for crystal clarity, okay, finally, okay, we're going to clarify. What are we talking about? Vote for in an outcome determinative fashion, i.e., who are you actually picking in your perfect world, who is winning? But that still isn't helping at all. Are we saying winning with the ability to enforce their agenda? Or are we saying winning and they're just the president and nothing happens? Like, we're going back to this weird, like, yes or no. Like, this feels like TikTok farming. Like he's trying to say, like, Destiny said he would vote for Trump over Hassan because of Hassan derangement syndrome. It feels like that's the answer that we're mining for. And I feel like I've typed enough up here in good faith to justify that feeling I'm having is not a crazy feeling. Like this is not saying anything. And when he says that is what the question is trying to suss out, that's not sussing anything out. That's just the surface level question. Who would you rather vote for, Hassan or Trump? I'm trying to suss that out. That's not sussing out. That's just the answer to the question. Sussing out would be by asking you who you would vote for. I'm trying to suss out who you're more ideologically aligned with, whose regime you would be more supportive of, who you think has a better outlook for America. These would be things you're trying to suss out, you know? With respect to political alignment, political alignment can answer that by getting ready for a debate. And then, I don't know. So we ran through all that. Just to answer that, the question at the beginning of the stream was, what's your problem with yes or no questions? Sometimes if you're enforcing too hard, this weird binary, like single word answer, you're kind of like, the answer becomes meaningless because the question is ill-defined and then the answer can be read in multiple ways, right? Answers that have multiple meanings are worthless unless we're making art, okay? And I'm making the ending of Inception, all right? When I answer a question, I want you to know where I stand and what I'm answering. I don't want it to be open to interpretation when we're talking politics, you know? So somebody donated and said, is there not an argument that Trump has a huge amount of influence in our government and Hassan has none? Like, why not vote Hassan knowing he will accomplish nothing, like no majority for that far left of an agenda? Okay, sure. So what you're saying is fine if that's the question, but I don't know what the question is. And when I was watching, part of the reason why I was late to stream is just because I was going over a bunch of like stream stuff, watching him argue with other people about this. When I would watch him argue with other people, they were also having trouble sussing this out. And Pisco would be very, very imprecise with his language, where sometimes he would say support, sometimes he would say vote for, sometimes he would say vote for somebody where they would have no constraints, sometimes he would say with the ordinary constraints, and then sometimes he would say the constraints don't even matter. But ultimately, like he does say this at the end, I heard this in a convo, where he says,
no, on the final answer to the question, no.
Okay.
There clearly is a disagreement.
All right.
Or do you disagree that there's a disagreement?
I think that there was, and I think that he changed it to now I don't know. I actually don't know what the disagreement is at this point. Maybe it's, would you pick Hassan in a system without constraints versus Trump in a system without constraints? Maybe there's a disagreement there, but I never asked that question. And to me, like, you know, that's not the question I asked. It's not, I don't think that we're arguing that. Though I would prefer Hassan in that, just to be clear.
Okay. So if after all of that, If Pisco says, I would prefer Hassan on the system of the constraints, then why not just ask that question? That seems like now we're at an actual area of disagreement here, right? Okay, so unable to act their entire regime exactly as they want, you would prefer Hassan versus me preferring Trump. If that is the point ultimately, well then why not just start there? Let's just be right there instead of going through all the rigmarole of the stupid earlier on, you know? You either understand what I'm saying or you don't. I don't think I can elucidate anymore. It's like asking who's more dangerous, like Hitler or O.J. Simpson? And it's like, well, am I a Jew in 1940s Germany, or am I a white woman in a football player's house? I don't know. Like that's such a variable question. Like Hitler killed more people, sure, but like in a one-on-one fight, I probably would roll the dice against Hitler over O.J. Simpson. I get right. It's a meaningless question, because however I answer the question, like you can read this in so many different ways, and it just Okay, back to the beginning for what my outline for this debate was supposed to be. What I was hoping we would kind of get through. Should we court leftists? So that was the debate topic, right? Defining leftist, what is a leftist? So in my mind, a leftist is either someone who is not for liberal democracy with free enterprise. They are socialists or communists who generally advocate for a vanguard party or some form of authoritarianism to guide us to a socialist utopia, okay? In order to get rid of all of the capital owners, you have to take their property. Now, there are some fantastic ways to do this, where Econoboy suggests that somehow the government can just buy it and every capital owner will back off of it and be okay with that somehow in some world. Most people will say, understandably, there's going to have to be some violent form of taking it. This is the revolution, is when the proletariat, which is the working class people, rise up and they seize from the capitalists, the owner class, the means of production, the capital, the stuff that's producing the goods and services for society, and then the ownership of that is transferred to them. Now, this has to be facilitated by a single party rule. You call this a vanguard party. This is like a core tenet of like Marxist-Leninism, but historically, they never make it out of the vanguard party stage, which is why none of the socialist worlds have actually emerged. They all get trapped in the authoritarian rule. Go figure. So anyway, a leftist is either someone who's not for liberal democracy, or number two, someone who just wants the government to do more stuff. This is where I would put like Econoboy or Bernie Sanders or AOC or anything like this. Two, we shouldn't allow leftists to steal everything from liberalism that works and just redefine it as leftism, because that completely and totally undermines any functional part of our liberal democracy by blaming all of the ills on liberalism and capitalism and stealing all of the success for socialism. One thing I noticed that people do, and Econoboy actually did this on his own a little bit in our debate, is leftists will do these things where they'll say, oh, a 5-day work week? That was because of socialism. Oh, a minimum wage? That was because of socialism. Oh, labor unions? That was because... So basically, every bad thing that exists in our capitalist society is bad because of the capitalist stuff. And the only reason we have anything good whatsoever about any of the work stuff is because of socialism. It's like, okay, well, in that case, I guess me. I guess we have nothing good comes from capitalism at all, because all the good things that do come from capitalism are actually just socialist in disguise, The second question here that I had is, who should we include in the Democratic Party? There's nothing wrong with including people who share some fundamental basic values, generally revolving around concepts of liberalism and free market enterprise. And more concisely, capitalism is an essential part of liberalism. Our ability to freely associate with certain people without the government issuing commands to every part of the economy for how to operate. Thank God, I guess we didn't have to get to this, because it's difficult to defend in this day and age where the circle jerk is that employers and capitalists are evil or whatever. But one thing that people don't understand is that if you ban private investment and you ban private capital, it's not just that oh, cool, the government owns stuff and now we all get to benefit from, the successes of our companies. There's a more sinister question that is underlying that. And the sinister question is, who decides what businesses exist and who decides where the investments go? And that's like a big thing that socialists almost never want to address directly. And they always try to skirt around this issue with a complicated market socialism or some type of syndacticalism or some sovereign wealth funds like Norway, while ignoring the fact that, okay, well, first of all, you're talking about taking over a system that was fully fleshed out with private investment, or you're talking about these huge social wealth funds that invest in capitalist economies in private firms, right? Because if you don't have free enterprise, if you don't have private investors, then every single time a new business is going to start, you have to basically vote for the government to allow it to happen. Hey, we want a business that creates a new video game console. We're tired of PlayStations and Nintendos. We want something else. Then you'd have to vote for the government and petition the government and say, hey, can we make another company that makes an Xbox, right? That would be a vote that you have to win, because you're not allowed to do that individually. You're banned from doing that. You are not allowed to do that. You are not allowed to do that in a socialist economy. You cannot privately form a company. You cannot cannot do it. It is banned. It's not a polite suggestion. It is banned from doing it because in a socialist economy, private enterprise means that there is an owner class employer, and the only way that he can make money off of his investment is by scraping the excess value. He has to extract the value from the laborer. The only way to extract the value from the laborer is to exploit that person's labor by taking the surplus value as they sell goods and services and not paying them a fair wage, and then collecting that as your capital rent. Okay? Yeah. Whether you agree or disagree on all of that, okay, is fine. But I'm just saying, like, this is an essential part of the socialist mode of operation, okay? You cannot escape this. So when I say capitalism is essential to a liberal government, syndicalism? My bad. When I say that capitalism is essential to liberal government, I don't mean like, oh, we need like Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos to be allowed to come into our homes and wives whenever we want. I just mean you have to have people who are allowed to create their own businesses, create their own startups, and to decide like what they want to invest their money in. Okay, that's what I'm saying. All right. So who should we include in the Democratic Party? So people that have like a broad or some kind of like fundamental values or whatever, you know, that align with us. We shouldn't try to keep people inside of our movement who would try to dispossess the majority of the movement if they had the power to do so. Listen, here is Wolf saying explicitly that in your debate with him. This is the PS4 or 5 question.
Under your system of worker cooperatives, would I still get my PlayStation 5?
Absolutely. You'd have to struggle a little bit for it. You'd have to talk to your fellow workers. You'd have to talk about the distribution of income. You'd have to compare your desire for PlayStation against all the other interests of all the other people. It wouldn't be something you worked out on your own with your particular boss in any way. It would have to be a democratic decision. You'd have to come to terms with that the way you do with democratic decisions now in our society to the extent that we have them.
Okay, so now I know a lot of people make fun of him for this answer, but I actually appreciate his answer because at least he's being honest about his answer. And even if it sounds ridiculous to you, there are pros and cons on both sides of this, right? You know, you make fun of the fact that like, oh, I'd have to beg workers in order to get a PS5, like that sounds horrible, right? But like you could, from a socialist perspective, you could say, oh, true. Isn't it so much better that you get a PS5 for free because starving Chinese kids have literally no option in life but to work and be enslaved at capitalist factories to make video games for you, right? You can always phrase this negatively on either side if you want to, okay? But I'm just saying, I appreciate Wolf's answer here because at least it's an honest answer, and then we can debate the pros and cons of it, of which there are legitimate pros and cons, okay? I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you like every other person on the internet does about their ideology and tell you that every single thing about my ideology is the best, because it's not true, okay? There are pros and cons to everything, all right? One of the reasons why I pushed yesterday on this, on the media sphere side of things, is because when you look at the entire leftist media apparatus, all right, all of it seems to be on liberals like crazy. Why would I ever try to include people in my movement whose sole purpose in life just seems to be on everything we do? Like, they talk about things like re-education camps. They want to ban like all forms of private enterprise and investment. Like what? Like, are these really the people that like I need to be keeping in my movement? And then kind of going along with that second point, the third point is reciprocity is important. It doesn't make sense to keep someone around who would exclude you from their own movement, right? How many times have you heard this? Cut a liberal and a fascist bleeds. Liberals always side with fascists. Why must we constantly bridge build to them, but they never bridge build to us? If we criticize any of their candidates, we are called sellouts, bootlickers, racist / Islamophobic, etc. But they will always on and attack our candidates constantly. I don't know if you guys remember all the insane homophobic Pete Buttigieg, but like, bro, when Pete, after one of the debates, if this was like a socialist candidate and we would have tweeted, like a whole bunch of liberals would have tweeted out, like Democrats would have tweeted shit out about this, about like a gay socialist candidate, bro, it would be over, okay? Like it would be, the leftists would lose their minds. And they also tried to lie to you and say, oh no, there was no homophobia with anything related to this. It was just, it's about a movie, LOL. If they want to reject all of this messaging and say that it just comes from radical online content creators, which is also kind of where we got to in the debate, but again, the Pisco was screeching and screaming so much we couldn't really get anywhere, then who are we supposed to look to as thought leaders of leftists? So my question was, is it Bernie Sanders and AOC? Because they're being almost universally attacked by those on the left online right now. These are also lawmakers. They're not really thought leaders or media/movement figureheads. It's hard to say if any successful ideological leader or figurehead could be a politician in a liberal democracy just because you have to appeal to so many people. So I stuck this in here because I don't actually know the history that well, but I feel like just like on a cursory glance of my brain, I feel like most of your activist or thought leader people in the U.S. historically aren't usually politicians. I mean, I guess they could be, but I'm leaning heavily, obviously, the civil rights, people like Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or these types of people, or I think you're big suffragists. A lot of these people just aren't politicians for whatever reason. I think that activists and stuff are doing activism and everything, and they're not usually your politicians. Generally speaking, I believe that's true. Also, I don't know if I really ever got to get this out. I think I kind of did, but again, there's a lot of screaming. AOC and Bernie Sanders, if we were to draw in their version of what socialist is, okay, so if I put lib capitalist over here, and then I put I'll do DemSoc or Democratic Socialist, some kind of socialist over here, they're picking people who are AOC, Bernie Sanders. These are your outer perimeter. These are your most lib-friendly, lib-coded people that you could ever have, okay? These are your most lib-coded, pro-capitalist people that you could ever have. And it's these are your ideological leaders for this whole socialist movement? Really? I'm not buying that one. I don't like that one. I think it's okay to include people who are further left than us, but they have to view us as a vehicle that they have to view it, I guess, as a vehicle that we're all riding together in to achieve fundamentally similar ends. Our different end goals could be slightly more or less extreme versions of our ideas, but they can't be for the abolition of our system and then moving over to an entirely different system, especially one that would mandate violent purges of all the people in the current group, right? So if you're a person who's I think that we should have trans kids from age 1, and someone else is I think trans should be 18 and older, and that's it. It's okay, fine. You can have a tent that has both of these types of people in it. But if you're a person who's I think we should have healthcare and all this stuff, and but if people want to start businesses, they can do that. And you're a person who's oh, that's cool. I think healthcare is good. But I think we should fundamentally alter the entire political composition of the United States of America, probably eradicate about half the Constitution, and then get rid of every single person in this country or imprison them if they agree on capitalistic ideas. It's that's not, no, you don't bridge build with those people. You don't have those people on your side. I'm sure there are things that I say that Nazis agree with and the KKK members agree with or whatever, and that's fine. And if they agree with me, I'm happy. That's good. I'm glad that they agree with me on some things. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to look to them and start aligning myself ideologically with them because they happen to agree with some things that I say as a byproduct of my direction. It's not I'm trying to appeal to those people. Also, we never really got to this, but the both sidesing also completely destroys any ability to have any political effectiveness and necessitates a total ideological change of the Democratic Party. When you both sides the parties constantly and say both the Democrats and the Republicans are doing this bad thing, the only alternative you're giving people is total eradication of the party's platform, right? Because again, think about it. If you spent your whole life hearing, wow, the Dems and the Republicans are the same, why the f would you contribute to any Democratic project? You're not going to. You just want to do a whole new thing. Because why the f would I appeal to a slightly better version of the MAGA movement of the Republican Party? How do they stack up with us? I was going to do more examples here, but when I was doing my research yesterday, I was I feel like we're not even going to get to this, and I was right, we didn't get to this. But they don't share fundamental values. Yeah, just these statements about politicians.
I think that he also, just as a matter of campaign strategy, was.
So he's talking about Mamdani right now.
Omnipresent. He was everywhere. He's going on podcasts. He was doing social media. And so I think a lot of more conventional political operatives didn't see him coming.
Andrew Cuomo had a more conventional media campaign.
For sure. And I think in many ways, he, in addition to the moral disqualifications that went with his history, he just didn't, if anything, he reminded, I think, a lot of people of the status quo. So I think a lot of people are focused on the leftism, the ideological leftism, that I think we shouldn't be so surprised that prevailed in a New York Democratic Party primary. But I think if my party wants to learn lessons from Mamdani's success that are portable to a place like Michigan, where I live, it's less about the ideology and more about the message discipline of focusing on what people care about and the tactical wisdom of getting out there and talking to everybody.
So Pete Buttigieg here is basically saying what Pisco and Econoboy are kind of claiming to say, okay, well, we should forge tactical alliances as long as we're kind of aimed in the same direction at the end. And Pete is saying we don't necessarily have to be socialist per se, but the strategy of Mamdani's campaign and the execution was good, and we should copy that, right? And the response, obviously, because Pete doesn't want to buy in fully to the leftist ideology, is this man is a rat. He looks like a rat. He talks like a rat. If you smelled him, he would reek. of rat, right? This is the vanguard, right? It's like, Jesus Christ, like seriously? They don't fundamentally align with us. Okay. Remember how I say sometimes Hassan floats back and forth between being like a super progressive guy and being like a tanky, right? So when he's progressive, he's leaning into all of the idpol, the identity politics stuff. Hey guys, I'm a Muslim. Racism is a big deal. Like we got to do something about this. But then sometimes he floats back to the Marxist-Leninist perspective, and Marxist-Leninists only care about the class separation. Everything else is a distraction that is thrown up in front of you to disguise the fact that the real enemy is the capital owner, right? He said that in his TikTok thing yesterday. They're trying to distract you with all these topics. The real issue is the capital class, right? And he kind of he'll say it, he just goes back and forth, depends on what he's talking about.
It is by wide ass margins too. Also, overall, like social policies are literally completely the social policies are completely irrelevant. It's literally just distractions. Like if you are actually interested in dialectical thinking, you should know that. You should literally be like, yeah, the social policy is just a simple distraction as capital owners squeeze every ounce of surplus labor value from you as we fight left and right when we should be united as workers. The f do you mean? But again, this guy's not a socialist nor a communist. He's not anything. He's just a grifter.
So so these people, they're not even really ideologically aligned with you, even in your short-term goals, right? Because if they're ever doing like LGBT support, or they're supporting things like welfare reform or any of this kind of, they're really just doing it to kind of placate you while they use your movement to grow. They're not really ideologically aligned with you. Oh, I had the Virgil tweet here. I just had some about Pete, because Pete's kind of popular right now, so it's kind of unhinged to see how they've treated him in the past. And he's, again, I think Virgil was part of Chapo Trap House. Now he does this podcast with Brianna Joy Gray, right, who is the online comms director, I think, National Press Secretary for Bernie Sanders. I think she worked at The Intercept, I think at Rising Hill, or The Hill or whatever. Yeah, they constantly attack us and on us for liberal things. There's again, I didn't have many examples here, so I don't think we're going to get to this, and we didn't get to this. But I know that we don't like to think about it because it's not sexy and it's not about class, and online we're all white, but black people, especially black women, are queens, okay? These are this is one of your hopefully unshakable pillars of Democratic Party support, right? So it's not surprising to see that the Democratic Party will appeal to black people, especially to black women. It's an incredibly important. What was the vote for black women for Kamala versus and for Joe Biden as well? It's like plus 70 or 80 points or 90 points. It's a huge favor, okay? And then when you get quotes like, who is this for? 20,000 likes. This person got it. Good job. Older black women, the base of the Democratic Party. They're just hitting on its idpol, right? Oh, who cares about black people and women? This isn't important. We need to talk about class consciousness, They would exclude us once in power. I don't have any examples of that. And then real world impact. I was going to go over the Dearborn. I think that kind of came up a little bit. Just the difference in votes between the 2020 election and 2024 election. I'm sure you could run down more districts and find it too if you wanted. But we never even got to what were Pisco and Econo Boy messaging in the past versus what they're messaging now. My questions. These are questions I wanted to ask, but we didn't get through any of this. If you felt like we should try to court them, why would you go on to argue that they probably have no negative electoral impact anyway? Shouldn't we court them then if that's the case? Oh yeah, it's confusing. This is a thing that I say. Sometimes people will say things like if I were to say to somebody, hey, I think you murdered your wife. And your immediate response is bro, okay, I didn't kill my wife, but holy shit, she would wake me up early every fucking day. She made me fucking do the laundry. She fucking sucked at cooking. It was horrible. She fucking complained all the fucking time. She would make me play League with her, and she fucking fed every fucking game. And it's okay, hold on. You just started off by saying that you didn't kill your wife. Why are you giving me a whole bunch of justifications for why somebody might murder her? Why didn't you just say oh no, I didn't kill her? And then that's the end, right? If you don't think we should ever try to court any of these people on the far left, then why even mention about how you feel like they have no electoral impact anyway? Why even go off into that subject matter? Now, to be fair, this is bouncing between Josiah and Pisco a little bit. And then they try to bring it back to we think that AOC will still get elected. And it's is that our marker for success? All of this broader conversation to say that it's very weird to see this. It's very weird to see this world where we're just pretending that the online political world has absolutely zero impact for any part of the real world at all. What are we doing here then? That just seems very strange to me. And a lot of the online communication now is online. QAnon existed online. I feel like Trump's base and everything a lot of it came from the QAnon people and then came from the Tea Party people. But I think he got a lot of support. Like, the Donald subreddit was a big one. 4chan support was a big one. The QAnoners were a big one. The Facebook crazy ads and crazy propaganda were big ones. The Joe Rogan, the podcast, all these things were big ones. Like, how can we simultaneously say Kamala Harris fucked up really hard by not going on Joe Rogan, and then in the next breath say, but the online world probably doesn't matter that much? Like, how do we say that really none of it matters? I don't understand. Pisco does this thing a lot where he keeps saying, like, the lefties are where the actual vigor is right now.
I think that the lefties are where the actual vigor is right now. And it's not among these institutional types. And it's not among these, but now it's some of them, right? It's the more sober types.
Like, if that's the case, then copy the strategy, right? Like, I think that from what I've seen people, especially post my subreddit and a little bit I've read, Hitler seems like he had really good political messaging strategies. That doesn't mean we should become Nazis. It just means that we should probably copy some of the strategy, okay? Also, it's very easy to have a lot of vigor when you have no stake in the game, because leftists don't give a fuck about actually winning elections, number one. And number two, when you're literally attacking everybody, when you're literally shitting on everybody, Like, I don't, like, when it comes to Josiah's approach here, I don't disagree with Josiah's approach. I just don't think we should apply it to lefties.
My general disposition is, unless I get super pissed, when I have a conversation with somebody that I consider nominally an ally, I do treat them with kid gloves, because I don't know what it is that they can take in terms of criticism and the intensity of the criticism. And if I judge the coalition as being broadly more valuable than litigating every single disagreement that we have, then
you'll hold back.
Yeah, exactly. And I genuinely don't know of any, like somebody like Destiny, for example, when he had disagreements with me, I know for a fact that he kept his powder dry. Like, he didn't go 10 out of 10 hardcore on every disagreement that we had. He made,
like, this is like half true-ish. Like, if I had a disagreement, I'll legitimately disagree. Like, and I'll spell it out. Especially because Josiah is very smart. I don't have to kids gloves anything with Josiah. He's a very smart guy, and my guess is even back then he was more up to date on all of the current political stuff and news than I was. So I'm not even sure if I could have gone kids gloves off with Josiah.
He didn't call you a communist? That's
no,
weird.
I mean, he may have now. I have no idea. But my point is,
I don't think Josiah is a communist or socialist. I don't even think Pisco is a communist or socialist. I don't even truly think that Econoboy is a socialist. I know he's defining himself like, which is part of the problem. But, like, I don't disagree with Josiah here, where it's like, yesterday, I saw Josiah give a take where Josiah was like, I think that actually a 20 an hour minimum wage, I actually think that could be viable. Like, I'm not calling up Josiah and being like, okay, you hard. Why don't you walk me through what a 50 an hour minimum wage would look like? I want to hear it. No, shut the fuck up. Have you ever hired anyone before? Show me how you would fucking do this. Like, that's unhinged, right? That's crazy. And there might even be like a point where we have a platform and like we just don't even discuss something. So it's like, this is a huge high minimum wage proponent. I'm not personally a fan of a very high federal minimum wage, but like, I don't know if we're going to drill in on that, because why won't I drill in on that? Because who should we include in the Democratic Party? There's nothing wrong with including people who share some fundamental base values. And if they have like a slightly more extreme or less extreme version of things that are like more or less in line with our fundamental values, it's not worth like exercising somebody for that, Like a high minimum wage federally is not something that I am like fundamentally morally opposed to, right? If somebody says like, I think that we should have 20-hour minimum wage, I'm not like, you're my ideological enemy. Like, see you in the Civil War, pal. You better hope I don't cite you up. Like, that's not going to be the case. Like, okay, fine. I disagree with that. I don't think it's dumb. Even more extreme things like rent control and like, I think they're really bad policies. But I don't think that's enough to make you my ideological enemy. So, I think Josiah's reasoning and rationale here, I think are all good. I just don't think I would apply them to socialists who relentlessly attack the left. Like, Josiah here, like, if they applied the same lens to us, I would be so much different in how we would feel about this, right? But, like, Crystal Ball is one of the sane ones, These are some of our most important people, right? This is one of the most important people in the country right now. This is a senator. The Senate is incredibly important from a divided state, Michigan. So when it comes to, like, effective political stuff, this is one of the most important people that you can have, right? Okay, well, how does the leftist treat the liberal now, right? Well, do they build a bridge, and do they try to put small disagreements aside, and do they try to see like where we have common ground, where we can fight against MAGA?
Curious why you wanted to talk to us. What do you mean?
And
forgive me if this is impolite. Like, I'm curious why you wanted to talk to us. What do you mean? Well, like, we don't have actually a lot of senators, especially ones.
I didn't even finish this interview, but she decides to make the whole interview about Palestine and Gaza. And it's like, why are you focusing on this one is like unhinged. So it's like, no, like really, these are the people we're supposed to build a bridge with these people? And then it makes you feel crazy a little bit because then you get like statements.
Yeah, he's right about the micro point, but the macro point, which is why what I think Econoboy and I were trying to get to is, let's get some energy. Let's get some fight in us. It's something that we can improve on, which is why I think that initial inclination of you, Connor, is so telling. Because that's my initial inclination is, yeah, like I hear these two young boys, these young men who are coming on and basically saying Democrats need to be better fighters. And
that's not what the vanguard is saying. Oh, the Democrats just need to be better fighters. They're saying the Democrats need to abandon their entire liberal capitalist platform and become socialists. Like, that's just an insane whitewashing of...
And I agree with that, right? I totally agree with that. On the micro points, yeah, Hutch wins. We've always agreed with him on those specific micro points.
I don't know how much of my content these guys watch when they try to ascribe positions to me. I will continue to point this out, though, about every single person that does this, whether it's Pisco or whether it's Hassan or whether it's Justical or anybody else. People say stuff like this constantly.
I'm super displeased with the DGG coverage and Destiny coverage of the live and learn stuff. I essentially think that there's a campaign that is almost specifically intended to misconstrue arguments, to make conclusions that we're not making.
Like to misconstrue arguments, like intentionally trying to misconstrue arguments at a like 2 points.
To lie about our positions.
To lie about our positions. Like, I feel like I watch a decent amount of the content here. Like, I link it all. Like, full stuff gets linked in my thing. Like, I'm not like just taking, you know, like, oh, like here's a compilation of like 2-second statements. Like, we've watched like long form, like hours and hours of these guys chat with each other. I do this with everybody, and it's very irritating to me that like that the bad faith thing comes out like so fast. Like, oh, he's bad faith. Oh, he's lying. Oh, he's like, I could just have a disagreement. Like, I could also be misunderstanding things. Maybe there are things that I'm missing, right? Maybe maybe you have a reason for why, you believe this particular thing, or unfortunately, and I'm probably going to lean into this a lot more going forward, which is unfortunate and sad, but I think it's just like an adaptive thing for the world. Like just in terms of how I like fit people into the world, maybe it's just projection to where now there is going to be an intentional attempt to lie about my positions or to misconstrue what I'm saying, and now they're projecting that onto me. But I watch a lot of this like long form stuff. It's not like I'm just like, again, it's not like a clip compilation of like, oh, look at them, they said that they hate, Oh, and then like you talk about like bad faith statements.
We'll rewatch this or whatever.
And I want to say all of this is premised on a fundamental notion that ideologically I'm different when I'm not. Ideologically, I'm the exact same. There's a reason why I was working with Destiny in the New York project. It's because fundamentally I believe in the vision of liberalism. Fundamentally I believe in a vision of liberalism. That's why I was in that community and not Vosh's community. I was in that community and not Hassan's community. I was in that community and not Denham's community. Because our visions are much more similar. And not a single person can ever explain what about my vision has changed. What? Because I interact with Tim Pool. I interact with
So one thing that I notice that people do that I think is just so, I feel like it's a big indicator of bad faith is when people do it, is when people keep bouncing back to arguments that they know are bullshit or that they have had disproven before. And I've seen people argue for this before. Like, nobody is upset when you argue with people that you super disagree with. Nobody is, that's especially in my community. Like that's never, ever, 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 ever happened. Like Pisco is going to do a Tim Pool debate that he said might get uploaded on Friday. I'm probably going to watch it. I'm probably going to agree majority with Pisco because unlike these guys, I'm not going to be an unhinged anti-fan that's now going to hit on every single fucking thing he says because I fucking hate him. You know, nobody has ever made this claim of like, oh, you're changing because you're talking to Tim Pool now. Like, why are you even saying that? Like, who has ever in my community ever said that ever? Especially in my community. We're like the do battle community, you know?
This is bizarre. It's cult-like behavior.
And then he does this thing also where he's like, oh, like you guys are all unhinged and you have derangement syndrome, and you guys are a cult, but not me. Like I'm uniquely exercising my free will and my cognitive thinking. It's like, what is happening here? Pisco, he kind of moved to a new position. He like bounces back and forth things. I can't tell what is
and maybe the distinction would
like. Here's another thing too. I feel like my position is fairly clear. I mean, that debate yesterday was a show, but I feel like I speak enough on these things that most people probably can guess where I stand on things or know where I stand on things. I've said it.
And maybe the distinction would be, okay, I'm okay with Democratic politicians going on these platforms to spread their message or to debate and be contentious. So one would be, if it's a kind of chill interview, to just push your message to more people, right? Let's say that there's a big charity thing that the Democrats are trying to do. I don't think we have a problem with going on Hassan Piker's stream, even if it's not contentious, to promote the charity. Or if there's like, for example, does everyone agree that during the 2024 election, it would have been good for Democratic politicians to go on Hassan's stream and say, everyone make sure that you're voting for Kamala Harris. And if you try to push back and say, hold on here, what about the genocide? What about this or that? To be contentious about that.
Like, I don't think anybody would disagree with that. I wouldn't disagree with that. If somebody wanted to go on Hassan's stream and say like, hey, you should vote for Kamala, and if Hassan pushes back on that to have a contentious thing, is the implication here that I would disagree with that? Like, because he started to frame this eventually as to like, oh no, I'm just saying that when we go on these streams, it should be to fight, the super far lefty that are anti-electoral. Is that the position? I guess I don't know. Now, Pisco has said multiple times. He said it in the past, and he said it yesterday that he doesn't support Hassan Feiger or whatever, which is fine, cool. But then it's like, what about all of the other people in the far left media establishment? Because it's not just Hassan that shits on Dems constantly. It's everybody. It's everybody. It's everybody. Which is why when I asked yesterday, it was actually funny because I was going to have to argue through it and I would have taken a minor L in the convo. But for some reason, nobody brought it up, including Econo Boy. Because what I kept saying is there a single person in the far left media sphere that doesn't know Dems constantly. I was almost expecting, because after I said, I was like, fuck, Econo Boy's going to bring up Matt Bruenig. Because Matt Bruenig is like an avowed, I think he identifies as a socialist or whatever. But I actually kind of agree with Matt Bruenig on all that stuff. But he never brought Bruenig up. I don't know why. But I was like, okay, woo, good for me. But the fact that they couldn't name a single person in the left-wing media sphere that doesn't just on Dems constantly, it's like, bruh, what are we doing here? What are we doing here?